U.S. Representative Peter Roskam sits down with the NBC5 political reporter Marianne Ahern to discuss high gas prices, among other things, on this morning's City Desk.
Good morning, I'm Marianne Ahern. Welcome to City Desk. It's that time of year when congressmen who are elected every 2 years are thinking about November. And our guest this morning is Congressman Peter Roskam. Thank you for joining us.
Great to be here.
You've been a rookie congressman. Can you tell us, after almost 2 years, what can you tell the 6th District? This is what I've done for you.
Well, it's interesting. The 6th District sent a congressman to Washington that was really concerned about fiscal matters, is really concerned about not raising taxes, and is really concerned about trying to create energy independence for this country. And what I've observed is this is a Congress that's pretty dysfunctional. There's a lot of ideas that get caught up in donkeys and elephants, unfortunately, and where two people could rationally sit down and have a conversation about something and hopefully come up with a solution. We haven't seen that attitude really coming out of Congress very much, and that's been disappointing.
Your experience with Springfield, which isn't exactly functional right now either, but do you look at that, Springfield versus Washington, and what do you see as far as differences in how you've been able to take that experience?
Here's the difference between Springfield and Washington. The Illinois Senate, where I previously served, is a small chamber of people. It's only 59 members. And you're present together frequently. You're really together a lot when the bills are debated and they're brought up and they're amended, and you argue back and forth, and then you vote on them and you're done and you move on. But you're together a lot, which means you really get to know one another, and you can develop relationships that you understand each other regardless of political party. Washington, D.C. is different. The House of Representatives is an enormous institution, 435 members representing 300 million Americans, all coming together. You're not present with one another very often. For example, I serve in the Financial Services Committee, 70 members on the Financial Services Committee. One House committee is bigger than the entire Illinois Senate. So you're dealing with a difference of magnitude sometimes, which is why it can become very challenging to come to a consensus on issues just based on the diversity of the country.
And does that make it frustrating that you're not able to see more progress sooner?
Well, it makes it less easy, let's put it that way. I knew what to expect. It's a complicated institution, and if you go to Washington and you think you're going to wave a magic wand and change the world, you're profoundly naive. But by the same token, to be able to sit down, look at energy, for example, where we are, we ought to be able to come up with a solution to release resources within this country, along with conserving, along with doing the types of things we need to invest in from an alternative energy point of view, and yet that's stymied sort of based on special interest politics. And I just think we can do better, and I think that there's other members of Congress who think we can do better too.
One of the issues you've been most interested in is mass transit, public transit, getting more folks to be involved in, especially in your area, getting folks able to move about into the city, out of the city. What can the federal government do to entice more commuters to put back their cars and hop on mass transit?
Well, there's a role to play, and clearly with the Metro system, I represent literally thousands of commuters every day that come in on the Metro train lines. So if the federal government says to employers, look, we're going to give you a tax credit if you pick up the cost of public transportation for your employees. That does a couple of things. It doesn't create a new federal mandate, right? It doesn't say you have to do this, but it's an invitation. It says we're going to participate with you, and we realize that there's good things that happen if you incentivize people to use more public transportation. I came down here today on the Eisenhower, and I came at a weird time and had to come in on the Eisenhower. But last week, I was able to come in on the Metro, and it was like just made all the sense in the world. So creating that invitation to get the pressure off of the normal transportation, surface transportation, I think is an appropriate role for the federal government. A light touch, not a heavy hand.
And how many folks are saying to you, what about these gas prices? What can you all promise consumers that are just really concerned that it's going to be $5 a gallon very soon?
I do these events called Congress on Your Corner, where you go to a local, we do it at a local grocery store, send mail out in advance, say, hey, Congressman Roskam's going to be here from 10 to 11 in the morning. did one in Bartlett, did one in Elmhurst. Consistent conversation with folks is gas prices. And I think, my district gets it. My district says supply is a big part of this. It's not the only part of this. But what we've got to do is resist the temptation as Americans just to kick the can down the lane and not deal with this. We had a wake-up call in the mid-'70s with the OPEC oil embargo. And really, rather than wrestling with where we need to be as a country, the gas prices came down, the lines lessened, and we kicked the can down the lane. We said, let's deal with something else now. We can't do that. Energy is inextricably linked to our economic success. And high energy prices have an adverse and a disproportionate impact on the poor. They're least able to absorb it, and it's got a ripple effect through the whole economy.
All right, let's just take a break for a moment. We'll be back to talk a little bit more and a little more politics in just a moment. Welcome back to City Desk. Our guest this morning, Congressman Peter Roskam from the 6th District. You do have an opponent, Jill Morgenthaler, once again a veteran, as you faced Tammy Duckworth in your previous election. What about those issues of the war? She has complained that you have not supported the GI Bill and haven't been there for veterans. Do you think that might be a big issue in your election?
Well, I think if you look at the whole record, the veterans in my district know that I support them. And as we move forward, I think folks are very concerned about what's happening in Iraq. I traveled to Iraq last year, traveled to Afghanistan earlier this year, and we owe a great debt of gratitude to our veterans. But I think moving forward, there's a lot of folks that are interested in talking about energy. They've got deep concerns about structural impediments in the economy. They want to make sure that we don't squander the free market that we have, that has created more prosperity for more people than the world has ever known. And yet, we can do better. And I want to be part of those solutions moving forward.
And what about the solutions for the war? Is the war going to linger on for many years as you see it, or do you see some kind of quick exit?
Well, I don't think that there's a quick exit on the horizon, and I think several thinking Democrats don't think that there should be a quick exit on the horizon. But I do sense that there's a great deal of frustration. Americans, we have essentially reached the point at which we can be expected to give. And the troop deployments that reached a very excessive level, troop deployments of 15 months, and asking folks to go back and back and back again, I think those days are over. And the next president is going to have a lot to say about the direction that we move. But when I was with General Petraeus in Iraq, he cautioned a bipartisan group, a bipartisan delegation of members of Congress. He cautioned us about a quick exit. So I think we need to be wise, and I think on balance, the folks in my district, they want to make sure that Iraq is as stable as possible, but they're weary of it too, frankly.
And explain your vote then on the GI Bill. Why did you take the stand you did?
Well, because the GI Bill, I'm a co-sponsor of the underlying bill, but as many things you know in Congress, you don't get an up and down vote on simply that bill alone. So unfortunately, it was loaded up with a whole lot of other spending, and it was loaded up with $51 billion in new taxes. Nobody sent me to Washington, D.C. to raise their taxes.
Your district has been Republican for so many years, but you saw what happened in Dennis Hastert's former district. Does that concern you that there's a trend in Illinois, especially should Senator Obama be the Democratic nominee?
Well, I've never underestimated any environment that I've ever been competing in an election, and I don't underestimate this one. But the feedback that I get in the district is I have folks coming up to me, frankly, thanking me for the work that my district office is doing, thanking me for accessibility and openness, because my attitude is I represent all the folks in my congressional district, and they've got the right to talk to their congressman. They've got the right to expect that their cases are well handled and they're handled respectfully. We've helped over 1,000 people already, everything from getting a passport at the last minute or a Social Security check or medals that were awarded to a veteran that they didn't receive through some fluke. So, Mayor Daley's old line, good government is good politics, I think is something that we all try and live by.
And tell us the mood as far as Republicans are feeling in Illinois about that whole movement of the Obama campaign in the state. Does that concern you or no?
Well, it's on my radar screen, and you'd be naive not to consider having Barack Obama on the top of the ticket as a factor that's going to drive interest. But by the same token, I've never come to the conclusion that I don't have something to say to somebody that's going to be voting for Barack Obama. I think we got a lot to say to people that want fundamental change. You got to figure out where we're lining up and on what issues. But by the same token, I think there's a reluctance in our area to send more Democrats. I mean, they've really been gravely disappointed with kind of the fratricidal nature of the Democratic Party in Springfield, where they're not getting along. They've not been able to, there's one party that controls everything, and they've not passed a capital bill, which is putting federal money at risk. They're not able to get over themselves and put together a program for roads and bridges and schools and other infrastructure needs.
And it doesn't look like that's going to happen anytime soon. Can all of you as congressmen and former state senators say to the folks in Springfield, come on, let's get it together?
We have. Listen, the message is clear time and time again, because what is at risk is literally billions of dollars in federal money that has been set aside for Illinois infrastructure programs, but it's got to be matched by the state of Illinois. And I'll tell you, that money doesn't sit on that table in Washington for very long. There is a shelf life to it, and there's other states that have their acts together that are aggressive and are interested and are not just gonna sit back and let that stay there forever. So there's some very real federal money that is being jeopardized and put at risk right now, which is just foolish.
And what would you say as you head to this re-election in November? What is the number one issue? Is it the war or is it the economy?
Well, it's both and, isn't it? I mean, when people are actually talking to me, they're mostly talking to me right now about energy prices and the ripple effect through the economy. They're feeling it very much. They're frustrated that the federal government has not responded well, particularly on the long-term investment from alternative energy points of view, pushing conservation, but in the short run, creating more supply domestically here in the United States.
Well, I hope we get to speak to you again before your election efforts in November. We'll talk to you then, I hope.
Look forward to it. Thank you.
Congressman Peter Roskam from the 6th District. And to all of you watching this Sunday, have a great day.